Hello, this is Sasha Allenby, and a warm welcome to all of you who are joining me tonight for this webinar on writing your book in 2014. I'm really excited for you guys because I'm guessing you've got some kind of mission, some kind of New Year's resolution, or some kind of promise to yourself that this is the year that you're going to get your book written. Maybe last year you had the same promise, and the year before, maybe it's something that's kind of gone over and over for you, or maybe it's just like this one time this year you've kind of gone to set your New Year's resolution and you know that this is it. So whether you're somebody that's been kind of going at this for a while or somebody that's brand new to this, hopefully there's going to be some things in the webinar tonight that fire you, that inspire you. You may have been receiving pre-coaching emails from me. I sent a couple of videos out to you to really kind of get things flowing for you. And we're going to draw on a little bit of that tonight as well. And I'm also going to continue and send you some more out after the webinar's actually finished. So I want to see you write your book and get your book written in 2014. I know how much that's going to mean to you. I know if you've got a business that it's going to raise your potential in that business. I know that it's going to raise your platform and raise your game. And I also know there's a number of things that often stand in the way of actually getting that done. So hopefully we can blast through a number of those tonight. I will be taking questions at the end, and you can type questions in throughout and we'll come to them at the end just to keep the flow of the webinar going. So if anything kind of comes up as I'm sharing the information with you tonight, then I really want to welcome you and invite you to put your questions in and to share those with me, and I'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So let's get rolling. And do you know what? Before we even start sharing how I came on this journey of helping you write your book, I'd just like to pick up where we left off on the pre-coaching emails. And I'd like to tune in to that book that you're actually writing. And let's just take a moment to connect. We've got an awesome group of people here tonight, and you've all got the same mission. So whether you're listening to this as a recording or whether you're joining us live tonight, what I'd like to invite you to do is just close your eyes for a moment and drop into your heart, right there in your center. And you may have already started to visualize the book that you're writing. So as you do, get a sense of the cover, and you can even picture yourself holding it in your hand if that resonates with you. Seeing your name on the cover, turning it over, seeing your name on the spine, turning it over again, looking at your picture and the information on the back. Now you may have a clear idea of what that book is and who it's for, or you may literally just be starting out. Whichever it is, make the feeling of having written that book as strong as you can for yourself. Really tune into that feeling. Get excited about it. Obviously, I know there may be some nerves or fears or things standing in the way, but just start off by getting excited about it with this bunch of people that are sharing the same dream and goal as you. And as much as you're connecting into your own project, connecting to the excitement of everybody else that's online tonight or everybody else that's listening to the recording. And really feel it in your heart. And let that excitement blast through any fears, nerves, blocks, or anything else that's been standing in your way of this mission. And it's really that part of you that I want to talk to tonight, and I want to share this information with tonight. That part of you that is really fueled and excited and fired by this mission, by this project. Okay. And I just was checking in with questions before we went any further. I just wanted to make sure that everybody could hear me. And Denise says, bit of light humour. It's already tomorrow morning here. It's Thursday in New Zealand. Hello in New Zealand, and I'm glad to be part of your early morning. I assume it's early morning there. Okay, guys, let's get rolling with this. And so, because a lot of you have come to me through David, who is somebody that I have absolutely mountains of love and respect for, then I just want to give you a couple of minutes of my background to share how I came about sharing this webinar with you. So, I wrote my first book, Joyful Recovery from Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, just after I'd recovered from long-term illness. I had one of those miraculous recoveries where for a number of years I was completely disabled, and then I found a number of tools and techniques that really helped me transform my emotional health, and my physical body healed accordingly. When I wrote that first book, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. In fact, I'd probably had one article published in a free magazine, and I'd written a blog post or two about chronic fatigue. And other than that, I hadn't really written. So if you're somebody that's starting out right from the start without any writing experience, I want to share with you that that's also where I started from. Now, that book did reasonably well for a niche book. I learned lots of things when writing it. I definitely wouldn't do it how I did it then. And there were a number of mistakes that I made in the process that I really like to share with people as I go along, because I love it that you can learn from those mistakes and then don't repeat them in the way that I did. What that book did is it opened up a number of doors for me, and I ended up writing a book called Matrix Reimprinting Using EFT with the creator of Matrix Reimprinting. And that's a book that ended up on Hay House and is in 9 different languages. So I pretty much spanned the whole kind of spectrum of the publishing industry, from a small independent label all the way through to publishing with the leaders in the industry. And as a result of that, people started asking me questions about publishing. And what I started to notice, when people were writing the books, they were making the same mistakes over and over again and coming across the same challenges. So the combination of my past as an English teacher, my knowledge as a marketer, made me create this whole kind of niche around book coaching. And it's led to the new book that's going to come out this month, which is called Write Your Book in 12 Weeks, The Definitive Guide for Spiritual Entrepreneurs. And it's led me to help you guys be able to really narrow down what the challenges are with writing your books and really help you to move through those challenges. So what we're going to do tonight in this webinar, we've got an hour together. And in that time, I'm going to share with you the common mistakes that I see time and time again. And I'm also going to give you some information on how to avoid them. I'm going to give you the 3 key areas. I surveyed 100 people, and I surveyed them about all the different challenges they found with writing a book. So the 3 things that came up for people were procrastination, structure, and momentum. So I'm going to give you some strategies to overcome all those 3: procrastination, structure, and momentum. And at the end, I'm also going to share with you, if you'd like to work with me further, how you can in the last 5 minutes of the webinar. So let's get rolling first of all with the common mistakes that I see time and again and how you can avoid them. So there's these 3 ones, particularly when you're writing a self-help book, that come up over and over again. Let's look at what they are and see if you can recognize any of yourself in them. If you do recognize yourself in them, don't worry, because following this, I'm going to give you some solutions. So if you've already been writing and under these kind of mistakes, I'm going to share with you some solutions that are really going to help you to move through that. So the first biggest common mistake that I see is people writing their life story, particularly in self-help. And here's what tends to happen. You've been through a major life challenge, or you've been through something huge. Maybe you've overcome trauma or an illness or disease, or healed yourself from something like huge, like cancer, or something absolutely radical. And you get the sense that your story needs to be told. Now, the thing is, you can use that story as a springboard for the self-help book, but it tends to be that if you just make the book about the story, then that becomes very, very unmarketable. There's kind of a few exceptions to this. I've got a friend who you may have come across. He's in the same film as David Hamilton, actually. And it's Brett Moran, and he actually went from being a crack dealer in prison and a crack addict to a healer. He's writing a book called From Dealing to Healing, and a story like that is just so off the wall is obviously like worth telling. But generally, if you've been through a major life challenge and come through the other side, that story can be part of your book, but you don't want to make it the main body of your book. Otherwise, you tend to fall into another genre of books, and that genre is known as tragic life stories. And if you look up tragic life stories on Amazon, you'll see a number of stories that are kind of based on people's life story and the big trauma that they've been through, but they aren't necessarily self-help books. So if you want to write a self-help book, the first thing we've got to do is take it out of being autobiographical. And if you've already been making it autobiographical, I'll share with you in a moment how you can transform that. So the second biggest mistake that people make is they make their book into a concept book rather than a how-to self-help book. So a concept book is a book about how to live life, whereas a how-to self-help book gives different steps, strategies, tools, or techniques to create transformation in life. So there are some really big concept books. You might have come across them, you might know them. Something like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle is an absolutely classic example of a concept book. And generally, those concept books, other than the kind of like huge ones like someone like Eckhart Tolle would write, generally, again, they're not so marketable. Around about a decade or so ago, it was quite fashionable to write a book about how to live life. You know, it's often written by maybe a spiritual teacher or some kind of enlightened spiritual master. And the thing about these books is often when you read in them, you have some kind of profound awakening. So you're reading through and you're connecting with the author, often who's written it from maybe an enlightened place, and you're connecting with that, and you have some kind of a huge shift while you're reading it. What then tends to happen in the majority of cases is that you go back to your life and you find that that shift that you had while reading the book doesn't transfer across to life. So what you do is you find yourself having a conceptual enlightenment almost, where you get it when you're reading the book, but when you come back into reality, then you're not having that same experience. So a how-to self-help book will not only give you these concepts, but it'll give you strategies and tools and techniques for how to apply those concepts to your life. So instead of it just being about what you have to do, it gives you steps. They're the kind of books that have got things like 7 steps in them. They're the kind of books that have got different tools and techniques, maybe teaching you those different tools and techniques through the book. So you can actually go out into the real world and apply that to yourself. So the third common mistake that people make is that they write their book for everyone rather than a specific audience. When I'm coaching somebody to write a book, one of the most common things I hear when I ask them who's the book for is something along the lines of everyone from 18 years to 80 years old. Now, as you start to write, if you haven't clearly defined who your audience is, in marketing it's called an avatar. If you haven't clearly defined who your avatar is, then what tends to happen is your tone of the book can kind of slip and slide all over the place. If you think about the conversational tone you'd have for an 18-year-old, it's going to be very different to the conversational tone that you'd have for an 80-year-old. And it goes all the way across the spectrum. So if you haven't defined who the book's for, as a writer, it becomes much more challenging to write it. But also for the audience, when you come to market it, it comes a lot more challenging to actually define who the audience is if you haven't worked that out right at the start. So what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time just going over the solutions for those 3 challenges. So if you have been either writing an autobiographical book, if you have been writing just purely a concept book, and if you have been writing for everybody rather than a specific audience, I'm going to give you some things that are going to help you shift and change the book that you write in, or shift into another direction that's going to make it much more marketable. So to address common challenge number 1, your story can be an inspiration in a self-help book, but you need to make the book itself about your audience. constantly you want to be asking what's in it for them. Now, I don't know if you've ever read a book that's really focused just on the author and not specifically for you as you're reading it. And it kind of works if it's specifically an autobiography. But autobiographies tend to be things like famous people rather than in the self help genre. In fact, if you think of even the most kind of famous people in self help, they don't tend to write autobiographies. Self help tends to be more about the client, about the person that you're addressing, and about the audience than it does about the person that's actually writing the book. So if you have been through some major life challenge, that story can be part of the book, but it needs to be more from the point of view of it's a small part of the book where you're sharing other tools, techniques, and concepts that enables your audience to have the experience that you've actually had yourself. So there's a real skill in writing your self-help book for your story for a self-help book. And I would say a number of different tips that I'd give you for this is to show the audience that you've been through an experience like them, but not go and kind of wallow in that experience with them. You want to briefly show them that you've been where they are, and then you want to skillfully elevate them to the place where you are now. So it's not literally just about telling your story and sharing the pain and sharing the facts of the story. It's about touching in on those challenges and then elevating from there. So, to address the second challenge that I see a lot of the time, if your book is largely a concept book, you've already written lots of your book and you've got lots of concepts that tell people how to live their life. A question that I would ask you if I was coaching you would be, what needs to happen to make it a how-to book? In other words, if you look through the material that you've got already or the material that you're planning to write, out of that, what steps, strategies, tools, and techniques can you share with your audience to bring it off the page and into their lives? So you want to give your readership things to do. If you've ever read one of those brilliant concept books but come away and kind of said, yeah, but what next? What do I actually do with that? We want to help you to move through this as you write your book. So literally all the way through, as you share a concept, really think about how your reader can apply that to their life. How can you bring it alive? How can you make it into something that they actually do, or an action that they take, or a step that they take? Whether it's specific questions throughout your book, or whether you actually give them things to go and do in the real world, or whether it's stuff that they do purely through journaling and self-reflection. Giving them those how-to steps makes the book more marketable. And publishers tend to be looking for things that are much more kind of how-to these days and much less just purely concept-based. So what does your book give your readership to do? Really take that gem away and really think about the here's how of your book. So looking at the third common mistake that people make, who is your book for? You want to narrow down your audience, so you're writing literally for one specific person. Now, a lot of people get nervous when I say that to them in coaching, because what you obviously want is you want absolutely everybody to read your book. You know, that's the big goal. You want as many people as possible to hear the message that you've got to share. I assume it's a message that you're really passionate about and you've got a lot of love for, and you want to reach as many people as possible with that message. So when I say to you that you want to write the book for one person, that can be very unnerving. And lots of people say to me, yeah, but then how about the kind of like reaching the mass audience? So let me give you an example of how it works. I have been working with an absolutely phenomenal writer who's writing an awesome men's book. And that man's book is aimed at a 40-year-old man that's kind of just come through the 35 to 40-year-old kind of life barrier and has got some big kind of spiritual questions or challenges and is just coming into their spirituality in that place. Now, it doesn't mean that men of all ages won't read that book. And in fact, I can really wager that a number of women will read that book as well. But when you hone down who the book's actually for, it makes it very much easier to write it as a writer and also for you to market it when you come to actually build your platform and market it as well. So really, if you're writing a book right now and it's kind of for everybody, come back to yourself and really look at who that book's for and who you're actually addressing. Really tune into that in yourself, who you really feel will benefit from this message, and start to write the book from there. It'll change the whole tone of the book, but it'll also make it much more easy to market as well. Okay, so now we've addressed those three most common challenges. I'm just going to take a moment to see if there's any questions that's popped up around those, and then we'll go into the next piece. Okay. Yes, Susan, I am receiving your messages. I'm taking questions at the end, Alan. Ross says, "Hi Sasha, will we be able to get copies of your notes, handouts, and slides after the webinar, please?" Yes, absolutely, you will. I'll send those. I'll send you the replay, and I'll also send you a copy of the slides as well, so you don't have to take notes as you go along. How to define your market? That's a great question, Rose. I'll come to that question a little bit further on when we've kind of worked through these. I'll answer a few marketing questions at the end there as well. So yeah, and everybody else, Susan, I am aware you're here, yeah, and everybody else, just keep putting your questions in, and I'll make a space for them at the end as well. Awesome. Okay, so let's look at the survey that I did. I surveyed 100 people, and I asked those 100 people what their biggest challenges were, and I'll share the results with the survey. The reason I like to share these results is often it's a massive relief for people when they see themselves in these survey results and think, oh, thank goodness, I thought it was just me. So I'm going to share those with you, and then we're going to look at some of the solutions for you. So if you are a procrastinator in your writing, you are definitely not alone. Out of the 100 people I surveyed, 78% said I procrastinate and find it difficult to get started with my writing. So if that's you, then I hear you, I know how that feels, and you are definitely not alone in that. It was one of the biggest challenges that people highlighted when I surveyed them. So let me give you some strategies for overcoming procrastination in your writing. What I like to suggest is that you get all your ducks in a row before you start writing. I'm not sure if that's actually a British expression. I know we've got an international audience in tonight. So if that's a British expression, what I mean is get everything lined up before you actually start to write. In fact, I find that one of the biggest challenges for a writer, or one of the biggest mistakes that a writer makes, is they sit down and they just literally start to write. And they write reams and reams and it's a jumbled mess. Or they just like literally are like a rabbit in the headlights. The whole kind of thing seems really daunting and feels really daunting, and they don't know how to move forward with it. So in order to get all your ducks in a row, there's a number of things that I suggest you do. And first of all, and I think this may come back to the question that it was either Roz or Rose asked me a moment ago, where when we looked at when she asked about looking at defining the market. If you get really clear on who the book is for, what their needs are, and how you'll help them overcome their challenges with this book, then it becomes a lot easier to write. Now, what I would suggest in that is you actually write this book for something that you are really passionate about, for an audience whose needs you know what they are, and you literally look at what their different needs are, and then you work out how you're going to address their needs with this book. And it gets a lot clearer because you're actually clearer on who it's for, what are they needing, and how you're going to address those needs. You get all that in a row, and it becomes a lot easier and simpler to write. You're not just kind of trying to pull or pluck ideas out of your head, but you've got a clear strategy in mind for how to move forward. Now, in that as well, when you go to have a meeting with a publisher, they will ask you a question, which is, what is the promise of the book? What are you actually promising your audience when you're writing this book? A lot of people haven't worked out their promise of the book before they start writing. But if you work out the promise, for example, the book that I've written on writing a self-help book in 12 weeks, the promise of the book is that you can take the book, start from scratch, and in as little as 12 weeks, have a book that's written, completed, and ready to market. So it's a realistic promise. Now, if I made the promise of that book that every single person that read it would write a bestseller, then that would be an unrealistic promise, because obviously I don't know what you bring into the book and the content and the things that you're sharing. So the promise needs to be something that's realistic for the readership. But when you get that clear in your own head what the promise of the book that you're writing is, then it makes it a lot clearer for your audience as well. And it helps you to overcome that procrastination, because you're not kind of just hovering around, kind of trying to work out what it is you're going to write. You're really, really clear on what it is that you're writing. And so it starts to unfold. We're going to talk in a moment about structure as well, which is another key piece in overcoming procrastination. So, structure. About 60%, about 59% of you said, I find it difficult to create structure to my work when I start. And so, what I'd like to suggest is a structuring exercise for you. And you can do this really, really simply. Sometimes you can do this in as little as a day if you know what your book's about. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And the most effective and easiest way to do this is to make a mind map of your book before you actually start writing. I would do that when you already know what the book is, who the book is for, and what the needs are of the reader. Because then you start to think of all the different concepts and tools that will help to meet that reader's needs. And you can start to map them out literally on a mind map on a piece of paper. And underneath those headings on that mind map, which are likely to become your chapters, you can then add in a lot of different kind of concepts, tools, techniques, ideas, thoughts, and strategies, which become the subheading under each chapter. So before you know it, you've got a big kind of mind mapped plan, either on a huge piece of paper or on the computer if you prefer mind mapping software, with all these different strategies, tools, techniques, and concepts that are coming off it. And as you do that, you can start to look at the order within which that may unfold most naturally if you were going to write that as a book. So you literally look at that piece of paper in front of you. It's got a number of different concepts, a number of different tools, and a number of different techniques. And you can start to ask yourself some key questions. For example, when I wrote Matrix Reimprinting using EFT, I knew that a key part of that book had a bunch of science in it that I really felt that needed to go at the front before we started sharing the other kind of tools and techniques, so that people could see that it wasn't something that we just plucked out of the air, but that was resting on a number of different key scientific theories. So it was clear to me that that needed to go right at the front. And you'll start to see how things will unfold. It may not happen overnight, especially if you're new at this. You may spend even a week or so just going back to that structure and really working it through. But I promise you, if you do that, and if you get that piece really clear, not only will it help you overcome procrastination because you know exactly where you're going, but it'll also help you to map the book out. And so another great tip as a part of that is to actually build it into a book before you even start. So there's a number of different softwares that you can build a book on. There's things like StoryMill and a whole bunch of different softwares that you can build a book on. I like to do it the old-fashioned way, just in a Word document, but there's a very specific way that I do it that really helps me to feel like I'm writing a book. And you literally set the page sizes to the page size of a book. You literally measure up a book that you're currently reading about the size of the book that you want yours to be, and you set your page sizes. So you literally look like you're writing the size of a page. And then you're going to take your structure that you mind mapped with that you've put into kind of an order with chapter headings, and you're going to make those the chapters throughout the book. So you're actually building it before you start writing. And those concepts and ideas are going to become your subheadings, and you put them under each chapter. So you've literally roughed out and mapped out the book that you write in, chapter by chapter. And you've got this framework now that you can start writing in. So we're going to come to momentum now and look at how then you keep that process going as a writer. One of the key things that was identified was I lose momentum when I'm writing and sometimes go whole weeks or longer without working on my book idea. And that was a massive 85% of you that said that you lose momentum when you're actually writing. So I've got a few strategies for you there for momentum. One of the strategies is to write every single day. Now, what tends to happen for people when they're writing a book is they wait for some kind of special time to write. And if you've been waiting for that special time, you've probably experienced that it actually never seems to come. And life, as it goes on, seems to really get in the way, and you never actually get to write because you're just kind of waiting for this magical moment to come. So I suggest that you write every day and you get into a relationship with your writing your book. Some people like to save or take a day a week. Like I know people that have dropped maybe a Friday, for example, to write their book. And it can be quite frustrating because if you only keep that day for writing and you don't write on the other days, you don't build the momentum that you need to kind of keep it going. In fact, if you can imagine it, like if you had a lover that you only literally saw on one day, like a Friday, and you never spoke to them or you never connected with them all week, and you really looked forward to that kind of Friday evening that you had together, but when you got together, it was a bit weird at first and it took a while to get into the flow of being together. It's exactly the same with writing your book if you just keep one special day a week. The other suggestion then, if you've got that one special day a week for writing, is to just kind of touch in with it an hour a day in between. And it might just be that you just do like a subheading in that hour, or you just do something like a little bit of correction on what you wrote before, or a little bit of editing. But you keep that momentum and you keep that flow going by keeping that relationship built. It's like you're buying it flowers or connecting in with it or giving it some love every day. It totally changes your interaction and your relationship with writing. And it means that it becomes more of a habit for you. Say, for example, you are learning a meditation and habit and you only kind of go there every now and again. You know the difference between that and making it something that is every day. And at first, it feels quite challenging to fit into your life like that. But then it really starts to flow more. And so, literally, get into the habit of writing on the back of cereal packets, of writing notes on your lunch break, of pulling a notepad out on the subway or the bus or whatever else it is, of sitting outside the playground, picking up the kids and just making a few notes there. So you keep yourself connected with the whole thing and you keep it alive for yourself. It's really going to change your skill as a writer, but also the effectiveness of the book itself. So you're building that beautiful relationship with it. It's not something that you're on off with and hot cold with. There will be times where it needs a breather, just like any good relationship. But that relationship is the key to the momentum. Now, one of the other key things that I would suggest to you as part of that is to know where you're starting the next day before you finish. And if you've only got an hour a day or half an hour a day to touch in with your writing, when you finish, say, on a Wednesday, work out where you're going to pick up on the Thursday. The reason I suggest that is twofold. First of all, you don't spend the first half an hour of the next session trying to work out where to go next. But also, once you've decided where you're going and you've touched in with that, then what can happen is as the day goes on, you may start to get downloads or bits of information or ideas coming in that's going to make that next piece of writing much more easier to connect with. So you keep that momentum and that flow going by knowing literally where you're going to be next. And it's like a stepping stone. You know where you're going to step next time, and then you know where you're going to step the time after that. And it literally grows and unfolds like that. So I did have just the 3 strategies for momentum, but then I remembered an absolute favorite, and this one is key. So this is a bonus strategy for momentum as well that I'm putting in here. And what I suggest to you particularly once you've got your structure organized, so you know where you're going and you've got that book kind of built as a platform, you've got it all kind of threaded together. The thing I suggest to you is to write your best bits first. Write the bits you're most excited about first. Write the bits you're most drawn to first. Now, there's a number of reasons why I suggest this. Part of this process is helping you to really get your confidence up as a writer. And that is really key to the success of your writing. And so if you start at the hardest bit, or you start at the beginning and you try to just work through methodically, as soon as you come through to a piece that you're not quite ready to write yet, you'll come unstuck. And this is again where the momentum can start to stop flowing. And I learnt this the very hard way. I'm quite a methodical person, so I quite like the whole kind of idea, in my head at least, of writing a book from beginning, middle, and end, and going all the way through like that. Now, the reality is that if you do it that way, you can find yourself just literally coming unstuck with it, as I did. When I wrote the book Matrix Reimprinting using EFT with Carl Dawson, I was responsible for bringing together all the research, putting the whole book together, and pretty much like a huge chunk of the writing. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the first 3 chapters were based on scientific research and really kind of like bringing together a lot of different research from maybe 15 or 20 different books on the new sciences. And what I found was that I was getting really bogged down with that research. Now, that first 3 chapters alone took me 9 months to write, and I can honestly say I almost gave up. And what I did after that, at this point where I was like ready to give up, was I put those 3 chapters to one side and I wrote the rest of the book first. And I probably wrote the rest of that book in about 8 to 12 weeks, maybe not even that. And it gave me the confidence to go back and tackle those first 3 chapters, because I already knew the book was written. It was just this little kind of like piece at the beginning, which didn't seem half or quarter as daunting when I already knew I had the rest of the book in place. So if you've been coming up against something like that, where you just kind of hit a wall every time, then literally go to the best bits first. Write your bits that give you confidence. Get really inspired and fired. And then when you've got maybe 10,000 words or so behind you and you're really feeling like, yes, this is it, I'm on my way, then you go to tackle the bits that are a bit more challenging. And you know, sometimes those challenging bits just need a little bit more time to come through and really kind of grow and manifest as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to spend about 5 minutes, as I said at the start, telling you about my current book writing program, if any of you would like to join me on that. And then at the end, I'm going to take as many questions as there is and stay as long as we can to answer all those questions. So if you would like that extra support to write your book, then my new program actually starts on the 21st of January. January the 14th was last night, and we had the preliminary session for that, which is recorded. And that preliminary session was for anybody that kind of knew that they wanted to write a book but didn't know what it was all about. So the actual official program starts next Tuesday. And what I'm going to do in that program is bring my new book to life for you. And so it's for you, if you're serious about actually getting your book written in and in print in 2014, and you know that you're somebody that benefits from that extra support and benefits from having that momentum in a group. And it's literally for you. I'm going to show you, if you can write a blog post, you can write a book. So it's for you if you literally don't know where to start with writing your book, or already well on your way to writing it, but feel that you need that extra support at hand. So as well as last night's preliminary, that keeps sticking on my tongue there, preliminary webinar, there's also 12 extra weeks of webinars. And you're literally going to be looking over my shoulder as I share with you all the insider secrets on how to make this book a successful and marketable book. So you can literally start from scratch and have your book written in as little as 3 months. If you want to take longer with the process, that's absolutely fine too. A couple of my people are on the program and know that they want to take longer, but are still part of the program and joining us there. So whether you're somebody that thinks great, I'd love to have it done by the 8th of April, or you're somebody that thinks, actually, I'd like to spread it over this whole year, but I'd like that momentum and all that information, then you can join us, whichever one of those is true for you. So I'm going to literally help you to overcome procrastination and build momentum in your writing. So really get that flow and that momentum going. And I'm also going to help you to get the tone and the style right for your audience. About 65% of the people that I surveyed said, I'm not sure if I have the right style or tone right for my particular audience. So a big part of the program will be helping you to make sure that you've got that style and tone right so that you're reaching your audience in the right kind of way. I'm also going to support you to build a platform so that when you come to market your book, you'll have strategies in place. And again, when I surveyed you, over 80% of you said, I don't have a platform in place for marketing my book and wonder how to build my audience. So as well as writing the book, a big part of it is going to be how to build that audience and how to launch it so that when you come to the end, and there's nothing more frustrating as an author or writer to have a book that you finish that you then kind of not even sure how to platform, how to put out to a wider audience and put out onto a platform. So I'm also going to give you insider information and secrets on the publishing industry. I get asked more questions about the publishing industry than anything else. And so that you can make the right choices for you, whether you're going to go and submit it to a publisher, whether you're going to go through an agent, or whether you're going to self-publish it. And again, about 90% of you said the publishing industry feels like a minefield to me, and I don't actually know where to begin. I know how that feels when you kind of look at the whole industry, and it just feels like an absolute minefield. So I'm going to take the whole mystery out of the industry and help you make the right publishing choice or publishing decision for you. A lot of people naturally say they want to go for Hay House because they're the biggest publishers in the industry. And I can totally understand that goal. When I had that goal myself, I was literally like, there was no plan B. But I'll also help you define whether they're the right publishers for you or whether another publisher might be more along the lines of your book. If your book's more niche and maybe it's for a different kind of audience, we'll help you work out who's right for you and help you get really clear on that as well. So you're going to have all the support of a members-only forum. We've got an absolutely beautiful group already formed on Facebook. It's a private group for just people that are on the program, already there giving each other a lot of love and support for what is, for many people, and maybe for you as well, a very daunting process. So you've got a whole gang in there who are just literally sharing the love and support as part of the process. And you'll also get every day for 90 days, if that's the way you like to work, an email from me that's going to keep you supported, going to keep you on track, going to keep you focused. So as well as those 12 webinars, I'll be contacting you every day with videos, with pieces of information, with inspiration to keep you going on the process. I'm also going to give you a bonus. I did a program called Authentic Messenger with somebody called Brett Moran, who's a phenomenal marketer. And on that program, we share all sorts of things about building your website, about building your platform, about making e-courses, about making videos. And all those things are a huge part of your whole process as an author as well. So I'm going to share that program, which retailed at $565 with you as a bonus on the program. So I'm bringing you this program, the whole program, including the Authentic Messenger bonus, for $595 US dollars, which is less than the value of the bonuses. And also, if you sign up within the next 24 hours, I'm going to include a session with myself, and a session with myself retails at $250 an hour. So I'm going to include a session with me if you sign up within the next 24 hours so that you can have a real solid coaching session that's going to enable you to get really clear on what it is you're doing with this book and where you're going with it as well. So I also offer a money back guarantee. If after the first 2 sessions you feel it isn't for you, I'll give you a refund in full, no questions asked. If you'd like to sign up for that program, I'm just sending you the link now in your chat there. If you'd like to sign up for that program, the link is coming through there with you now. It's www.sashaallenby.com your hyphen book hyphen in hyphen 12 hyphen weeks. And that should have come through on your chat box as well if you'd like to sign up for that straight away. I'd love to see you there, and I'd love to support you in the process. My heart and soul is in this work. My passion, as I'm sure you can see, is in this work, and I'd love to help to bring the best out in you with that. So I'd like to take some time now to answer any questions you might have. We've got about 10, maybe a little bit more minutes, and I'm very happy to take any questions. I'm going to look first of all to see if there's any written questions from throughout the webinar, and then we will take it from there if you've got any more to add. So Esther said, so the best or the easiest? I'm not sure what that referred to, darling. So if you want to clarify that for me, then that would be awesome. Wonderful. A great question from Jenny. How does it work when I want to reference other authors who I've found invaluable on my journey? It's a really important question. A lot of people get a big fear about plagiarism and about stealing other people's ideas. So the way to do it authentically is to either quote them directly. And so if you quote them directly, then you're going to put obviously in quotation marks with a reference at the back of the book saying where you got that quote from, including page number, etc. So if you're quoting directly, it's good to go through and kind of make sure as you go through your research that you're taking notes on page numbers and all those things. Or you can literally talk about, say, for example, you were going to talk about somebody like David Hamilton, who I know a lot of you know. And so you would reference David Hamilton. You would say, perhaps, in the book, How the Mind Heals the Body, David explains, and then you would give a kind of a brief summary of something that they'd explained or shared in that book. So as long as you're kind of giving credit, and it makes it more credible if you can kind of give a reference to the book or give a reference to a particular section of the book, it makes it more credible than if you just say David Hamilton said ... without saying where that information was shared. Hope that's helpful to you, Jenny, and makes it a little bit clearer. Wonderful. That's a great question by Alan. What do you mean by tone? What I mean by tone is, say, for example, you were just in your normal conversational life. You were addressing say, a 7-year-old. You'll know that a specific tone that you address them with is going to be very, very different to the conversational tone that you maybe have with one of your friends in a restaurant when you're talking, for example. And it's the same in your writing. When you're actually thinking about the audience that you're addressing, you'll be thinking about the way that you'd actually speak to them in real life. And this is why it's good to really define your avatar, because if you just kind of like writing without really thinking about how you'd speak to them, maybe the tone comes across as either sometimes you get it way off. So sometimes it can be, say, condescending, or sometimes it can be too intellectual for the audience that you're addressing. Sometimes it could be maybe too academic if it's not a kind of academic crowd. Or if, for example, you're going to be writing it for doctors and psychologists, it's going to be a lot more of an academic tone. So it's literally about thinking about the people that you're actually writing it to, Alan, and then addressing them directly in the way that you would imagine speaking to them in real life. Okay, this is a great question from Stephanie. Is the course only for writing a self-help book or any kind of other book? It's for a spiritual book, a self-help book, any book that's of the spiritual and self-help nature. It's not particularly aimed at people who are writing something like a fiction book, unless it's a more esoteric fiction book, unless it's kind of weaving in fiction and kind of self-help together as well. So it's literally for people who are writing a book of this kind of nature, but there's people who are writing things like angel books or books on yoga and things like that are taking part in the course. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a how-to self-help book, but that it's generally a kind of a spiritual book, the kind of book that you might find on Hay House as a guide. Okay, Alicia says, is it important to include real life examples from lots of different people? Haven't managed to collect many of those. You know what? I feel like it is important, and it's something that you can collect afterwards. And what it does, Alicia, is it gives your book more credibility, particularly if you're able to share case studies of people that have moved through their challenges, and they started at this place and they ended at this place. And if we kind of go back to David Hamilton's book, he keeps popping into, because I know a lot of you know David Hamilton, he keeps popping into my head a lot tonight. If you go back to how the mind can heal the body, and there's a number of different case studies of the body healing, my own included in that book. And what it does is it makes the audience be able to say, yeah, that's me, I'm like that, and I can move through that. So it does make it more credible. What tends to happen if somebody writes about something in isolation without the kind of like things from real life is it can tend to feel a little bit divorced from reality when you read the book. So the more you can include examples and case studies and references and things like that from other people, the more it kind of brings the book to life, Alicia. Um, would you need to pre-advise? Yes, absolutely. Jenny asks, would you need to pre-advise or ask them though? If you're doing a case study, if you're sharing a case study from a client, then yes, it's good to get permission, or in fact, it's essential really to get permission, although you would still change the name of that person. If it's something where you're giving an example, say for example, you're giving an example of something that one of your clients has been through and you make it quite general, then you don't necessarily have to have permission. If it's just something casual that it could be absolutely anybody that you're talking about on your client base, then it's not necessary to get permission. But if you're specifically given a case study, you need to get the written permission of the person that is actually being part of that case study. And sometimes they'll give the written permission to use their real name if they want that real name in the book, but generally you change the name of the person. You're welcome, Alan. Alan said thanks. Anne said, I have used a two-part approach for each chapter. A little bit of my story followed by a handbook section relating to that stage. Is this okay? Yes, it is, as long as when you're doing it in that style, because that style can really work if, as long as you're doing that, you're bringing it back to them when you're telling the story. And by that, Anne, I mean you're connecting it in and saying something like, you may have found like I did when I experienced this, or perhaps this is something that you recognize in yourself. So the key is the more it's about them, the more they're likely to continue reading. So I do like that format, but you'd have to kind of check that you were kind of bringing them into your story when you're using your story in there. Um, Wonderful, Alan. This is a great question. Alan says, I get this asked all the time. How many pages make a book? So rather than going for pages, because they can be all different sizes and fonts, what I'll give you is the answer for what generally constitutes a self-help book. And it's generally between 30,000 and 80,000 words, which gives you a kind of a big scope there. So 30,000 words is kind of like if you want to write the kind of book that is really accessible to the reader, is got some great information in it, but isn't too bogged down with lots of research and other things. And then obviously, like on the other end of the scale, your 80,000 words is going to be like a lot more heavier and a lot more detailed. Also, I would like to add to that with the fashion for Kindle books, it's become fashionable to write, if you're self-publishing this is, to write books that are maybe 10 or 15,000 words and release them in a small mini series. So that old kind of paradigm of it has to be around about 30,000 words has kind of come down and changed and morphed a little bit since the birth of Kindle books and self-publishing on there. Oh, that's an interesting question, Susan. Susan says, do you lose your credibility if you write using a pen name as opposed to your own? Now, this depends. If you're looking specifically in self-help, then if you're writing a self-help book, it is advisable to write it in your own name, because with self-help, it's really dependent on you building a platform for yourself and you really being part of that process and really being the face of your book. which is very different if you're writing a fiction book. A fiction book you can literally write under an alias, and people don't necessarily care who the author is as a kind of a character. Whereas in self-help, kind of the heart of it is the message that you're sharing, and the book becomes integral to that message. So people don't tend to write like self-help and transformation books, at least from a pen name, because you kind of have to be out there as the face of it and promoting it as well. Whether or not you're going through a publisher still wants you to have a platform in place. Okay, I think we came to the end of the questions. I have had an absolute blast sharing this information with you guys. I've loved your questions. I've loved having the opportunity to spend this time with you, whether you're listening to this live now or as the recording. I will be sending some more stuff out in the next couple of days, and I will be sending this webinar replay and the notes out in the next 24 hours as well. Remember, if you want to join me for the program, oh, we've lost our way back. Remember, if you want to join me for the program, I was going to skillfully take you back to that slide so that you could see what it was. There we go. Then it's www.sashaallenby.com/your-book-in-12-weeks. And I hope to see you there and share this journey with you. However, I've had an awesome time tonight. You guys rock. I wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully I'll catch you again soon. Have an amazing, amazing night, and thanks for your time. Goodbye for now.